Kinji Hakari, a third-year student of Tokyo Jujutsu High and only a few years older than Yuji and Yuta, has only been featured in around 15 chapters by the time this video was recorded, and we've only seen him fight 2 times. And yet he is already arguably in the conversation of being one of the top 10 strongest Jujutsu Kaisen characters of all time. Well, if we're being honest, it is even arguable. Hakari is definitely in the top 10. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at how Hakari got to such a high position in the power scale of Jujutsu Kaisen in just a short amount of time, by explaining the abilities and power of this character and ranking his strength among the top tier characters of Jujutsu Kaisen. This is my first video in literally years in which I explain and analyze a character's power and just conclude how strong they are. So make sure to leave a comment down below where you have Hakari in your Jujutsu Kaisen power rankings, and if you think he could take on the likes of Gojo and Sukuna. But without further ado, let's get into Hakari's true power revealed. Now, for more structure and order and just overall organization, I feel like we could all use in our lives, especially someone like Yuji. I mean, man's on the run from something or someone literally every other arc. This video will be divided into 3 parts, 3 different aspects needed to divulge into Hakari and his true strength. Part 1, Hakari's character and history explained. Part 2, Hakari's powers and abilities explained. And finally, Part 3, Hakari ranked on Jujutsu Kaisen's power scale and in relation with other top tier characters. There will be video chapters on this one, so do what you want with that information, and let's take a look at Hakari's character. Now, Hakari has always been an interesting, nice way of saying unhinged or odd character ever since he was first introduced into chapter 10 of the series, in which we first knew of him as a third-year student who had been suspended from participating in the JJK equivalent of Naruto student exams, the Kyoto Goodwill event. Because according to Maki, a fellow second-year student of Tokyo High at the time, he had been recently suspended for clashing and having a certain disagreement with one of the more conservative higher-ups of the Jujutsu Sorcerer Society. And not just any civil disagreement, but he actually beat him from observing his fighting style, probably messed up one of those higher-ups bad. I mean, they probably had to take a trip to the ER with Dr. Shoko. And as we saw, when the higher-ups have been able to do literally anything they wanted multiple times in the series, including putting out a hit or a death penalty on Itadori more than once, they got Hakari out of there with a suspension. And just a little quick side note I had, don't take what I'm about to say as fact, but I'm personally of the mind that if Gojo wasn't present when this incident went down, then the higher-ups would have ended up killing Hakari as punishment, as we saw with other Gojo associated sorcerers once he got sealed in Shibuya. But hey, that's just me. So from the start, we were already aware that there was something up, something sus with this mysterious figure, and even then that was nothing compared to the character we were formally introduced to in chapter 153. We found out that since he had been suspended, Hakari started an underground fight club mixed with regular civilians and Jujutsu sorcerers, and it's kind of funny but kinda not at the same time. But while the S tier arc of the Shibuya incident, arguably one of the biggest if not the biggest events in Jujutsu sorcerer history was going on, and his fellow students were putting their lives on the line and actually lost their lives, Hakari was making that bread and living the good life. That's tough! And he for real was not aware of the Shibuya incident or what happened to Gojo at all. Hakari also had a partner who helped him run the fight club, whose gender hasn't really been 100% confirmed, but their name was Kiara. Anyway, in light of the recent Jujutsu terrorist event, the Culling Games, Megumi and Yuji, per Yuta's recommendation, went to this fight club to enlist his help, and boy oh boy were they not ready for what they meant in that building. After linking up with Panda, a fellow student and ally in the fighting ring, and attempting to find Hakari, with Yuji actually meeting Hakari in a so-called business meeting, Megumi and Panda were confronted by Hakari's partner, and because her curse technique in that fight is just one of the more confusing things in recent JJK history, I'm not going to go too deep in it, and that's even when comparing it to other supposedly confusing moments, but Megumi and Panda ended up winning that confrontation to an extent. But we quickly transitioned to another physical confrontation between Yuji and Hakari after their so-called business meeting didn't go well, in which we find out Hakari's motivation in life and get to see just a peek at Hakari's real power, in which she practically messes up Yuji and even broke the man's nose. I mean, just look at that, but I will admit Yuji wasn't really trying. But fast forward after some Yuji style talk no jutsu, and Hakari's on their side. They then enter the Culling Games with Hakari and Panda initially teaming up, but are quickly separated due to unrelated factors. Hakari goes on to fighting 2 Culling Game fights as of when this video is being recorded, one being against a little weeb, and the other one being an S tier fight against a certified tryhard, and he won both of those. And it was actually in these 2 fights where Hakari displays the top tier level of strength that made me want to do this video, but we'll leave the breakdown of his power into the next section. When it comes to Hakari as a character, his characterization and personality, it's pretty obvious that all signs point to him being pretty moody, and on top of that, crazy carefree. He is an extremely passionate person himself who enjoys watching people get lost in their passions, which is probably where the Fight Club idea came from. He describes it as a person's fever growing hot, and he's really only motivated or cares about someone depending on their fever, which is how Yuji was able to get him on their side. Overall, it was this type of attitude as well as his curse technique, which I will explain soon, that led to his clashing with the higher-ups, seeing as his own persona as something seen as anti-conservative. But for being honest here, and I mean really honest, I just don't think those old head higher-ups could understand what the hell was going on with the arguably most confusing curse techniques in JJK history, which I'm about to break down. And that is all for Hakari's time during the series as of now and him as a character. Bro is a passionate hustler. Now it is time to examine and explain all of Hakari's power and abilities that have been showcased thus far. So before we get into the more intricate and, if we're being honest, the more confusing part of his abilities, let's just go ahead and cover the basics of a Jujutsu Kaisen power system. First off, Hakari is widely recognized and credited to be one of the most powerful students in Tokyo Jujutsu High, as according to Gojo all the way back in chapter 11. He puts him on the same tier and pedestal as Yuta, one of the exclusive forced but great sorcerers, and also widely recognized to be top 10 strongest within the series. Gojo believes both of them to have the potential to be as good as him one day, and even surpass him. And just to give extra context, Gojo, even after his healing in Shibuya, is still the strongest Jutsu sorcerer alive, so that's a pretty big statement to add to Hakari. And to add on top of that, in the build to his official introduction to the series, Yuta, who had already explained to be an automatic top 10 character, said that Hakari was even stronger than him when he got all worked up in chapter 146. But I'll leave the breakdown of that statement for the ranking portion of the video. Now it is assumed with Hakari being one of the top students of Tokyo Jujutsu High, he has a pretty decent, some could even say, a considerable higher amount of curse energy, as they live in a society where people have the higher rank and value tend to have higher amounts of curse energy. It's just how it is. But to be fair, that has never really been confirmed when looking at his innate curse energy levels. It's just something that's assumed. But the special thing about his curse energy is its unique property, a newer aspect and concept of JJK that's recently been introduced. When it comes to Hakari, his curse energy has been described as being rough and having a rougher texture to it. Gojo even gave some validity to the statement when he states Hakari's curse energy has a certain edge to it. And after Yuji got absolutely clobbered and looked like he had just gone to a boxing fight with a gorilla, which was technically after he got into a fight with a panda. Anyway, he was holding back, but the way Hakari was hitting that boy's face hits different. But in chapter 157, Yuji describes his curse energy reinforced punches as being hit with a serrated bat, which is practically means something jagged like teeth. And speaking of punches, Hakari is extremely adept at reinforcing his attacks with curse energy, making his hits even stronger, and no matter how much force he puts into a blow, his opponent would still feel a sharp pain regardless. And if you didn't already infer this, but Hakari also happens to be a master at hand-to-hand combat, as you see him throw some mad hands in his fights and cause some serious damage to Yuji. But with the basics out of the way, now it's time to get into Hakari's one-of-a-kind, literally, curse technique that is hailed as the most confusing JJK concept to date. Now for someone who really isn't an expert per se, more of a knowledgeable S-tier casual, I took a deep dive into the JJK fandom and chapters that featured him for the following information, because this time around we are really going to break it down. Now for his innate curse technique, it really is only primarily showcased in cases in which his domain expansion is used, which is something he can do and does often. The only actual instance in which you have seen him use his mind-boggling technique on his own is in his confrontation with Itadori, in which he summoned train doors to trap Yuji. But outside of that, as far as we know, he can only use his technique when his domain expansion is activated. But what is this domain expansion, you ask, and what does it have to do with summoning doors? Well, it combines two of the things Hakari seems to like the most, gambling and passion for romance. Now his curse technique is officially called Private Pure Love Train. Yes, that is his actual name for this curse technique, no joke. I mean, I could hardly believe it too, but it will make sense after I explain it, and here we are. Now his CT is rooted in exactly what his title is, as he can use elements from this fictional Japanese romance series as attacks. And for example, one of the aspects from the series we're introduced to was if the boy lead was going to make it to the train station to confess his love to the girl lead. Hence the train station doors he was able to summon against Itadori. But just to reiterate this again, these true adventures lies in his prized domain expansion. And I don't know if we have an official count, but I swear it feels like Hakari has used an expansion the most times in the series, him only being featured less than a quarter of the time the other domain expansion users are. This domain expansion is titled Idle Death Gamble, as he's literally gambling his life when he uses it. Now to simplify this jumble of a domain while also being descriptive, when Hakari activates his domain expansion, he enters a pachinko-like game, which is a game used for gambling in Japan. And the gambling aspect is then integrated into the Private Pure Love Train romance series. And when Hakari hits that magical jackpot, he gets a huge, and I'm talking gigantic, well, pause, prize, something that even the top dogs of this verse are not even capable of. It's also important to remember that in this gambling game that Hakari enters, by activating this domain, there are factors that start to get involved, like certain scenarios with certain chances, chance boosters, consecutive effects, visual effects, practically all of the mumbo jumbo that typically goes into a gambling machine and increasing his chance for a jackpot. And just an really important quick side note, he also tends to flex numerous times through the whole process. But the most important part of the process, or at least as far as we know from what we are seeing in these fights, is the game flow and which part or mode of the process he is in, and this tends to be the aspect that is a bit more straightforward. Practically, there is a 1 in 239 chance of hitting a jackpot when he starts out in normal mode, and then comes a series of private pure love train events and scenarios that determine if he gets the jackpot or not. And all of this is going on while the enemy sorcerer is forced to defeat him or allow him to keep drawing as his jackpot chances keep getting higher. That is important to remember. And on the off chance he does get into the jackpot mode, which I'll explain in a little bit, the game flow which comes after that is a make or break on how far his power can go. He then can either enter the faster spins mode, in which he can spin faster, meaning an increase in efficiency for getting that jackpot. But there is still a 1 in 239 chance, and if he fails at getting that jackpot in that mode, then his spins will be decreased to either 30 or 70 spins. So the more favorable mode for him to be in is the increased probability mode, which flat out increases his probability of getting that jackpot by a huge margin. And the process just keeps going until Hakari can't cast the domain expansion anymore, which does require both of his arms or runs out of cursed energy. Also, furthermore, in his most recent fight, we learned that his domain expansion is actually faster than Mahito's in Shibuya, which was already recognized to be the fastest domain activation with only 0.2 seconds, which in turn makes Hakari's domain activation the fastest we have ever seen. But now for the actual jackpot mode and its benefits explained, and why it actually allows him to step into top 10 territory. While in the jackpot mode with the time span of 5 minutes, Hakari has access to infinite cursed energy. You heard me right, a never-ending supply of power in their verse. And not Yuta or Gojo infinite cursed energy, because while they probably have the most in the series, they will eventually run out. But in this case, that doesn't apply to Hakari. His cursed energy just doesn't end for 5 minutes. And when able to apply that cursed energy to your physicality and hits, infinite cursed energy can really make you infinitely more stronger, if that made sense. Okay, if I'm being honest, I did exaggerate a little bit, maybe not that strong. I mean, we're talking about Hakari here, not Saitama, but for being for real, it does give him access to a whole lot of strength. I mean, just watch as him and his opponent toss around a presumably heavy, huge metal container around like it's a toy. But we do have to remember that infinite cursed energy doesn't necessarily automatically increase your output, but only increases your supply. And on top of that already unlimited cursed energy hack, his body is now able to employ the use of the reverse curse technique on instinct. Even though he himself never learned how to use it, this reverse curse technique is completely automatic as his body is literally overflowing with cursed energy. So with the ability to heal himself automatically and unlimited cursed energy, Hakari is practically immortal for the 5-minute time span. So I think we're starting to catch on how broken his curse technique, which is based on a fictional romance series, really is. I mean, imagine someone like Todo, who had automatic heals and unlimited cursed energy, as if he wasn't already a stud when it came to his power. Oh, did I say Todo? Because I meant the Hulk, because that is what Hakari is turning into in this jackpot mode. But to summarize it, Hakari has a normal mode, and using certain scenarios and boosters from the romance series, he can keep increasing his chances until he hits the jackpot, in which he is an immortal beast for 5 minutes, and after the round ends, he may land himself in the faster spins mode, or the favorable increased probability mode that will allow him to once again get a jackpot, and trust me, he has shown to get them multiple times in a row. In Hakari's great words, which he uses to summarize this, he uses his skill to grab a hold of luck. And again, it literally took his opponent using everything he had to take out Hakari's arm, so he wouldn't be able to use the domain expansion because it literally wouldn't end. And even with how confusing his technique is, I gotta admit, Gege was in his a million IQ level mode like Todo when he made this. I mean, man was in his bag. But that does it all for explaining all of Hakari's powers and abilities. Thanks for making it past the breakdown of that ultimate hacks, but now it's time to rank Hakari on the power scale of JJK and with other top tiered characters. Now in Hakari's case, it's a little harder to rank him among the top tier characters like Gojo, Yuta, and Maki, because it really depends on which lens we look at it through. Are we ranking Hakari off of who he could beat in the fight, or are we ranking him off of how much power he possesses while at full strength? So I couldn't really decide, so I guess we're doing both, and we're going to start off with who he could beat in the fight. Now, for those of you who believe with the hacks that Hakari wields that he can contend and pretty easily beat the likes of Gojo, Sukuna, and Maki, well, bruh, hold your horses, because if you're really paying attention to the ability to explain portion of the video, then you will remember two pivotal weaknesses of Hakari's fighting strategy. 1. There is still some short amount of time between going from his normal mode at the start to his jackpot mode, as he has to use stuff like chance boosters in between and doesn't start out with a jackpot automatically, which 2. gives his opponent some time to defeat him before he hits the jackpot. Now, in all of Hakari's fight, which have only been 2 so far, he never really had to deal with this because he was able to get the jackpot so fast, and he also went against an opponent that was clearly weaker than him in his base in his first fight. But then that allows the argument to come up. Couldn't an opponent just find a way to defeat Hakari before he hits the jackpot? Well, yes, they could. But it's not going to be an easy task, because I'm of the mind that Hakari has special grade level strength and prowess at his base level, which I can prove from his fight with Kashimo. And for those of you who don't know, Kashimo is a participant in the recent Culling Games, and was already recognized as one of the strongest participants in the Jujutsu Battle Arena, where being at the level of a special grade is not as uncommon as what we've seen before. He was able to practically with zero effort one-shot Panda in his strongest form, and made Panda look like a little plush toy. Also, according to Kenjaku, like I said, using that top tier with Gojo and Sukuna, Kashimo is one of the strongest sorcerers Kenjaku met over 400 years. And just to remind you, Kenjaku has met the likes of Gojo, Geto, Jogo, and Mahito, and everyone I just listed are official special grade. And as far as we know, some of the strongest people Kenjaku has met, barring the other special grade level combatants Kenjaku brought back to life in the Culling Games. And mind you, when Kenjaku first met Kashimo in the flashback, we see in chapter 187, Kashimo is an old man and nearing the end of his life, and is still shown to lay waste to a battleground by himself. And yet he still remarks old man Kashimo to be one of the strongest he has ever met. Kashimo is special grade. And I said all this about Kashimo because this Kashimo is the same dude Hakari was going toe to toe in his base form. Because if you take a look at chapter 187, you can clearly see Hakari out of the jackpot mode, or just finished using the jackpot mode, combating with the likes of Kashimo, who while never went 100% with Hakari in their whole fight, was pretty serious in attempting to end Hakari before he hit the jackpot. But Hakari is clearly going back and forth with him, just like at this one panel where he's clearly trading blows, validating my opinion on Hakari having special grade level strength in his base. So back to the ranking. Now in no order at all, and again, no order at all, these are some of the more widely recognized top 10 characters of the JJK verse among the fandom and just in general. And we're not including any of the newer recent Culling Game participants but Kashimo. Okay, so we have Gojo, Sukuna, Toji, Yuta, Maki, Kashimo just based on some of the stuff I said, True Form Mahito we saw at the end of Shibuya, Geto, Kenjaku, maybe Naoya and Jogo, and we're just adding the likes of Yuji and Todo for fun's sake. Not really going to give my opinion on if they are top 10 or not. Question mark? And also, if any character weren't already put into this top 10, Hakari is probably beating your bleeping. Now in this group of people, I would honestly put Hakari winning the fight over Yuji, Toda, Jogo, and the rest of the special grade curses, Geto, and I would like to put Yuta against him as a standstill. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but we have to remember there was that one stronger than me statement from Yuta, but that really only applied to Hakari's jackpot form. And after seeing Yuta in that masterclass against the 4 pillars in the Culling Games, if I was forced to make a decision, I would give the fight to Yuta, but it would be close for me. But I do have Hakari losing to anyone I didn't already list from that group, because I believe they would be able to take him down before he hits the jackpot. You know, obviously with Gojo because he's Gojo. Sukuna could just blitz him, Mahito with the undefendable soul manipulation hacks, Kenjaku because just like Gojo, he is Kenjaku, and with the soul manipulation from Mahito, Toji, Maki, and Naoya would just straight up blitz and slam him, and Hakari flat out admitted he didn't think he truly won against Kashimo in their fight. So the fight based ranking list would be something like this: Gojo, Sukuna, Mahito, Kenjaku, Maki, Yuta, Naoya, Toji, and Kashimo over him, with Yuji, Todo, Jogo, the other special grade curses, and Geto under him. So like I said in my intro, top 10. And if we look at it from an overall power lens, which includes Hakari's max power, obviously his jackpot mode with unlimited curse energy and automatic heals, I would honestly say that he's inferior to only the likes of Gojo, Sukuna, and, well, no one. So yeah, I truly believe that when Hakari is at his peak power levels, he's comparable to no one but those two I just listed. As I would say that Gojo with the all-powerful Hollow Purple, with all of his power put into it, and Sukuna with his cut and cleave domain attack, which isn't meant to end until the target has been eliminated, has more power and overall attack power than Hakari's jackpot mode. Because even with the unlimited cursed energy, it doesn't mean he has the highest cursed energy output and can put a higher amount of cursed energy into his attacks, or at least more than Gojo and Sukuna, who have some of the highest cursed energy capacity and control in the series. And I would like to put Kenjaku with these three, as it is portrayed in the series how the trio of Kenjaku, Gojo, and Sukuna are just unimaginable levels above everyone else. But if I'm being honest, Kenjaku doesn't have that much feats to begin with. As far as we know, he can do everything Geto can do, and that's soul manipulation. That's it. And from what we saw in JJK 0, Geto's maximum power or maximum technique, Uzumaki, was absolutely clobbered by Yuta's max power, and that was a pre-time skip Yuta. And now we have a post-time skip Yuta saying that Hakari's max power was even stronger than him. Even though it's obvious that Kenjaku can do more, but we just haven't seen that more. And I'm not ranking how incredibly intelligent he is into a ranking-based list. So sorry to all the Kenjaku fans, if he even has fans, but I honestly think Hakari just runs up to him, clobbers whatever cursed spirit he throws at him, and continues to clobber him. Meaning on an official power scale, I would rank him top 3, which isn't just not bad, but actually insane for someone with around 15 chapters. But yeah, that was Hakari's power ranked, both through a fight-based ranking list and an overall power-based ranking list. So yeah, this is the end of the video. And for someone who never really enjoyed explained videos, I actually had a lot of fun with this one, especially since Hakari as a character is just fun to observe. I do plan on doing more power explained videos of other various anime characters, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for that along with more Jujutsu Kaisen content. Make sure to turn on post notifications, follow the Twitter, and most importantly make sure to comment how strong you think Hakari really is. But with all that said, Hakari is the best hustler in anime.